Well, good evening. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, and this is the first meeting of this calendar year for the Education Committee. I'd like to welcome my fellow committee members, Dr. Davis, Ms. Iannetti, Dr. Lovinowitz, and my fellow board members here for today. Also welcome to our district leadership team and people here in the audience and at home. I wish everybody a very good and exciting 2020, and hope everybody is off to a good start. Dr. Yanni.
There are no official announcements tonight, but I don't anticipate that the presentation will take the duration, Mrs. Ward's presentation will take the duration of the meeting. So after that, we can speak briefly about some of the work that we're doing with the Center of Educational Leadership as a leadership team, and then we can also speak about what's to come over the next couple months for this committee and some of the things that we have or that we'll be bringing forth in recommendations.
All right, and before we get started on our presentation for today, I also like to comment on the lineup or the arrangement of the tables here. The intent is to have a little bit more of opportunity for discussion in our committees, so that when we get to the legislative meetings, that we can pass on some of the things that we have discussed in these committee meetings. I think we are on 2 minutes. Ms. Evans? We don't have any minutes because we did not have a meeting in December. That is correct. So that brings us to Mrs. Ward, who's going to present the program of studies for Upper Dublin High School for the year 2021. So we're looking forward already to the following academic year. So Mrs. Ward.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Welcome, everyone. Wanted to say, before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to our school board members in recognition of for our school board members. Thank you for your dedication and your service and your commitment to our students, staff, community. It's greatly appreciated, your countless hours and time for us. So thank you. I am here this evening to share with you some updates and revisions to our program of studies. This is my 5th year now, our 5th year of presenting the program of studies to the school board members. I can't believe it, but it is the 2020-2021 program of studies I have here in front of me to share with you. Before we get into the inside of the program of studies, I'd first like to congratulate Darren Zhu. I had the opportunity to talk to him and share with him that this evening I would be talking about him and sharing that he is our cover designer for the program. Each year we select a student from the graphic design class, and this year Darren is our recipient of the cover. So congratulations, Darren. The program of studies, essentially there are 2 portions of the booklet. In the past, we have prepared a booklet that is fairly comprehensive and very lengthy. The booklet itself is broken up into 2 sections. The first section of the booklet covers, as the bullets say, an outline of the course selection process, the timeline, I'll use the word deadlines, curriculum overview, dual enrollment, special program offerings, graduation requirements, annual credit requirements for students grades 9 through 12, along with a grading scale, GPA, important practices and policies that students and parents need to be aware of in making decisions about course selection. The second portion of the program is our departmental pages. Each content area has a departmental section where supervisors have an opportunity to advertise and promote happenings in their content area, along with giving a scope and sequence 9 through 12 as to courses students can take. There are course descriptions for each and every class available in the program of studies, and new this year we've added icons an NCAA approved and advanced placement from College Board Icon, so that as you're looking at the courses, you can see classes that are approved through for athletics in post-secondary planning and AP classes in College Board. New this year in the procedures, or as I mentioned earlier, the first portion of the program, I think it's important to mention that we have a new student information system. We are using Infinite Campus. In the past, we did utilize eSchool. Parents, students, staff, school counselors, we all will be utilizing Infinite Campus. This is the first year using Infinite Campus for this process. I'm hoping for the best. I'm sure we'll hit some roadblocks and bumps and we'll get through them, but it'll be somewhat of a work in process, as this is the first time with Infinite Campus. New also in Infinite Campus, a feature I'm looking forward to using is the parent review portal in Infinite Campus. In the past with eSchool, we would, for course verification, we would print a copy of course requests for students, send them home in a backpack, and so to say, keep our fingers crossed if they came back to school the next day with a parent signature. Technology can be a blessing. With Infinite Campus, it's a click of a button in the parent portal where parents can review and then agree with the classes that are posted. Second bullet I have is March 13th. We have our new course override form. That's the deadline that these forms are due. If parents and students are not in agreement with courses that teachers recommend, we are asking that they fill out the override form, which will be available within the booklet, a hyperlink, and turned in by March 13th so that we can plan accordingly with classes and sectioning. Just have to mention June 1st every year. June 1st is our deadline for course changes for the following school year. Every year I probably will say June 1st, so June 1st it is. And the last change is a change in process with how we recommend changes for students during the academic school year and how students can choose to withdraw from classes during the school year. We match the timelines to make them more in sync and make more sense so that the window is the same. It minimizes confusion and close the window so that students and parents and staff know that the process and timelines are the same. There will be forms, as in the past, available through the program of studies if there's a course change recommendation or if there's a withdrawal that the student would like to make.
Mrs. Ward, can I just jump in for a second?
Absolutely.
So the March 13th date there for the new override form, some of the board members will remember that we used to have a process, AEA, Against Educational Advice, and that was a somewhat long and arduous process that if parents or students didn't agree with course recommendations from teachers, there was a meeting called, there was a discussion. What we've done is made the new course override process much easier, I think, for kids and for parents. So it's simply a form acknowledging that despite the teacher recommendation, the parent or the child feels that they want to go into a higher level class. And we're asking teachers, as they're making their recommendations, to really look at the data that they have in front of them. What's the assessment data telling you? And what does the student's performance in the class really tell you? And in several instances, as we're talking with teachers, there are kids that teachers are actually saying, you know what, let's bump that kid up and let's recommend an honors course rather than an academic course. So we are very hopeful that the new course override process will work out just fine.
That addition. Moving on again to the second portion of the booklet, here's where you'll see an example of the departmental overview. Each content area teacher or each content area supervisor has an opportunity to share protocol or procedures related to their content area. This is also where you'll see the visual progression of what students can start out taking and how courses they can end up taking. It does not mean that you have to stay on that pathway. Students can move on the path and take different classes. But this is just to give a visual understanding as to what is an option, or what the options are. And again, each one of these courses listed here as an example also has an individual course description in the program of studies. Okay, revisions. New this year, in the mathematics department, we have added programming with Python. This is a course to go in sync with our computer classes. I didn't add the visual, but that's one of the classes that students can take in addition to computer science or AP computer science. Also new is robotics and automated technology, and that is through the Eastern Center of Arts and Technology. That's a three credit class, excuse me. Eliminated this year, actually, this year we did not offer Algebra 213 or Biology Keystone 305, so those were eliminated last year, but for the books they are now on the PowerPoint presentation. And the last change, the science department has opened up some of their course offerings within the department and has changed grade level prerequisites. So 10th and 9th graders now have more access to science courses. In the descriptions, you'll see those. The communication process of the program of studies, I think it's just helpful to reiterate the process is the same as it's been in the past, but we're certainly very proud of it in the guidance office. Students receive recommendations from core teachers. Those will be imported into Infinite Campus. Parents will have access and will be able to review those. Students will then upload elective course selections to go along with those core class recommendations. After that point, students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade will meet with their school counselor. This typically is about a 3-week process. All students meet individually with their counselor. And 8th grade students meet multiple times in both small and large group settings to hear about the process, know how to make recommendations, and have their course requests verified through Infinite Campus. So it's a little bit different in Sandy Run than it is at the high school, but it's all getting to that point where parents have the ability to review or preview and then confirm course recommendations are accurate. I love everything about the program of studies. This is my favorite, it's one of my favorite things of the high school, but I will say I am super excited to share with you that the guidance office has worked really hard to improve not only the program of studies, but we're tying it in with the website. So what you're looking at is a snapshot of hopefully what the guidance website will soon look like, or definitely before January 30th, when the program of studies event will happen. The upper left-hand image is the home page. If Ashley were here, I would say the idea from her Human Resources website. We wanted to make the website more user-friendly and thought that this was an opportunity to make the program of studies a little bit more user-friendly. Some feedback I kept hearing from folks was that the document itself is 103 pages and it's continuing to grow. It's very difficult to scroll through and it takes a lot of time. We all love Google, but this was an opportunity that we took to create a website which hopefully will be a bit more user-friendly, and at a touch of a finger, you'll be able to navigate the table of contents along with, which is on the upper right-hand side. That's just an example of what the table of contents would look like, and the policies and procedures and the timeline. Everything will be easier to access. And then the bottom picture is just an example of one content area, the English department, and you'll click on it and it will just be the English department. So it'll be less time to download and easier to access. I do have the link of the booklet at the bottom. I'm not going to click on it because it'll take time to download, and I don't, but that's for your preview. All of that information will be uploaded onto the website. So the exact same information that's in the booklet will be on the website. It'll just be structured differently. I do have to take a moment to thank my colleague, Christopher Brown, our newest addition to the guidance office, who was instrumental in creating this website and helping me map it out. And Mr. Vinogradov, thank you. That's all I had for you this evening.
Before we open it up for some questions, I'd like to point out just a few things. First, Mrs. Ward, thank you for your presentation tonight. When we look at slide 5, there is the graphic for a scope and sequence or course options moving through or matriculating through the high school. One of the things that we've talked a lot about with our staff and administratively is providing access and choice to kids. And one of the concerns that some folks expressed last year was when we look at 11th grade and 12th grade, because there are 2 academic options in 11th grade and actually 3 academic options in 12th grade, that there would be some that would be misconstrued as track 3 classes. So could you or Mr. Hoffman speak about that concern?
Sorry. Over the years, each department has taken considerable time to look at course offerings and really try to offer content-driven classes that were more appropriate for different academic learners. And over the past 2 years, I'll say, the English department, this is one example, the English department created the art of rhetoric and film, the art of story, and the art of communication as options for our students based on content and, again, learning style. So as you look at the course descriptions, you'll see different curriculum offerings for students of different learning styles. Doesn't mean necessarily that they're lower or higher achieving students. The purpose was to ensure that the content and the delivery and the type of curriculum being offered was appropriate for that academic learner.
And I did notice that they have the same prerequisites, so there's no funneling system, correct? Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out in terms of the math department, so we detract Algebra 1 at the high school this year. So as we continue the work of de-leveling or detracking, next year there's no track 3 for Algebra 2. It makes sense that as we move kids through, cohorts of kids through, we don't want to put kids back into tracking. And so the process and the work to completely eliminate all track 3 classes at the high school is ongoing and will be ongoing over the next couple of years. But like I said, as cohorts of kids and groups of kids move through, that's when we'll target those areas for future detracking.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Ward, for your presentation, and to the whole department for pulling this all together, because I know this looks pretty simple, but it's a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of foresight, and I'm especially excited that we are finally moving towards 2 levels, going back, removing the 3rd level, and we're providing students some more options. So I think that's definitely exciting. Also very excited about the fact that there's a little bit more programming involved, that Python is entering Upper Dublin, which I think is a great opportunity for many of our students. Yeah, I have a lot of more questions, but I would like to open it up to any of our committee members for comments or questions. Oh, yes.
Mr. Hoffman, there's been a recent change at the state level about what courses can be counted for math classes. Can you speak to that for the computer science and math?
Yes, so with computer science, we haven't made a decision yet. Obviously, as a district, we'll be bringing that to Ed Committee. With computer science, it can, one of the changes can be that it can count as a math class or a science class. Additionally, personal finance was another course that can be used. Dr. Yanni, Donna, it was full credit personal finance for math, social studies. I think there was business. And so we don't currently have a full personal finance course. It's a half-credit course, and so we've been meeting with the high school and want to make sure that we get that course right. And so we're going to spend the next few months working towards that for the following school year as an option to make sure that for a four-year program planning with students that we have students in the right the following year. Yep. Yeah, it happened over winter break. So.
Correct.
Right, are there comments or questions from committee members? Dr. Lowinovitz?
A couple of questions on slide 4. I'll go in order. We talk about the critical course change and withdrawal process during the school year will follow an identical timeline and end the first marking period. That means at the end of the first marking period, and what is that? The process will remain the same?
The process that we've had in place was that teachers were able to make course changes during the school year, during the first and second marking period for students that may have been inappropriately placed. What we found was that counselors would like to be included in that process, administrators as well, so now it's a holistic process where not only the teacher but other staff members with additional information can make recommendation of change, and that the timelines are in sync with each other.
And it's until the end of the first marking?
Correct.
Until the end of the first marking period, instead of the end of the second marking period. We want to make sure our students are in the right seats before halfway through the year, halfway through the course. Obviously, exceptional situations happen. We would need to make a change, but one reason we feel strongly about the end of the first marking period, though, is if we do start to sense a struggle, whether that's a student, a parent, a teacher, a counselor, an administrator starts to feel that a student is struggling in a course, first step is meeting with the teacher and student to say, you know, what are my work habits like? What are my study habits like? Where are my struggles? What interventions? What supports? Am I doing my, work during class, outside of class? And so it does allow students and teacher to work through that process instead of making a change too soon as well. So a little bit of a challenge might be a good thing if the supports and time to make that happen is there. However, by the end of the first marking period, we want to make sure students are in the right.
Those changes generated mostly by teacher, student, parent?
All of the above.
And so the procedure was previously referred to as teacher initiated course change. And when we read that, the question was, so this is only a teacher-generated thing? And Mrs. Ward and others said, no, students make a request, parents make a request, administrators. So we named that process the critical course change process so that we're really reflecting what it is. That we really believe that if a change is needed, all parties are involved through that process, that there's documentation, that it's not just, this is too hard, I'd like to go into an academic class tomorrow, that if it's too hard, what are we doing to kind of work towards that? How can I challenge? Who are my supports? In allowing for that time to occur. But we feel very strongly for a staffing purpose and for the integrity of a course that we have students in the right seats as quickly as possible.
Most of the time, are they dropping down and some go up?
Some go up. Most of those changes have been a decrease in rigor.
But what this change does, it brings greater accountability and greater transparency to it. As we talk about how are we meeting the needs of kids, to have a kid change a course in the second or third week of school just because it seems too difficult, well, we have to look at how can we help the kid access that course? What are the prerequisite skills that may need to be bolstered up a little bit for success?
Even though the deadline is June 1st, what students could do is take the class and then decide that it's too challenging and drop down. right?
So scheduling a high school is like putting a puzzle together. And so the reason the June 1st deadline is in there is we have to have the bulk of the high school schedule done to have staffing in place to make sure that we have a master schedule for all students. There are some exceptions, but what I'm saying at this table here is this process will now have greater transparency and accountability. So it won't just be singular points of contact to move a kid out of a class, or for a kid to just simply say, I don't want to work so hard, so I want to drop a class. So that we actually will have a structure in place now to actually work with that child or work with that student so that he or she can reach his or her potential rather than just dropping the
Who
class.
signs off? Is there a final
Mrs.
signature?
Ward?
Teachers sign off, counselor signs off, parent, student, and administrator. So there's multiple signatures required.
Okay, okay. That was my difficult question. Let me ask some easier ones.
Can I back up for a second?
Sure.
And also just to mention that even prior to that, the teacher signing, there is a meeting between the teacher and the parent and the student. So that's
Right,
actually the first
right.
step in Dr. Yanni's point. What's happening? What's not working? What can we do? How can we?
Does it always happen then at the end of the first semester, or does it happen sooner?
I'd
there a
say within that first marking period, but the
First
timing is key. If there's, if they're going to be dropping into a different course and it's better that they get into that course for content purposes, then that obviously would be preferable. If it's an English course that you're looking to, the teachers would work together to make sure that the appropriate timing is there. We had put into the process, it's after 15 days of school and before the end of the first marking
Oh,
period.
okay, that's good. Then two easier questions. One is the programming class. It's interesting. I was meeting with some graduates over the winter break, and many of them expressed the need that we needed additional programming at the high school for all students. This Python class is a separate class of programming?
Correct.
Okay.
So there would-
Are we also looking at the potential of doing some components of programming in other classes, or are we doing that already?
That's one of our district goals. If you look at our comprehensive plan, our strategic action plans, really looking at how are we embedding programming and coding into other courses. That the reality is when you look at, how do I say this? So we require 21 credits to graduate. So one of the things I would like to look at over the next couple of years is increasing our credit requirement for graduation. And one of the rationales or one of the reasons to do that would be to build an even stronger computer science programming sort of STEM type pathway.
Yeah, we have elective offerings that involve coding and computer programming in both the middle school and the high school, with one requisite elective that gives students exposure at 6th grade. We've made an investment in materials so that we can begin building capacity in our elementary libraries as a hub and a natural tie-in to grade level math and science courses, so that we can have exemplar lessons that begin exposing kids in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade to coding and coding concepts to build capacity for greater participation in the middle school and then eventually in the high school track.
My easiest and last question is access to technology when they're out of this building. Do we know if there's families currently, and still in Upper Dublin, that lack internet access? And what do we do for them? Because it sounds like everything is now going to be, an infinite campus. And are we looking at that at all?
So over the years, so regularly our guidance counselors at all building levels work with families to identify if there is a need. And we've always been prepared to partner via the Ed Foundation. We provide families with information on Comcast Internet Essentials, and also we're prepared through the Ed Foundation to support those families. We haven't yet had a situation where we've had to actually work with the Ed Foundation. We've had a handful of families who've been deeply appreciative of the information on Comcast Internet Essentials. were paying much more than they needed to for internet. So, but here in Upper Dublin, we're very fortunate that we don't have that in place, but it is information that every family who enrolls in the district is provided with, and then our guidance team is very diligent to identify that need.
Along those lines, Dr. Levinowitz, one of the things that the superintendent group is talking with at Eastern is about being able to use our devices more fully and completely over at Eastern. We actually have a meeting coming up about that because sometimes some of the districts and some of the students have trouble accessing things when they're at Eastern. And so they're still our student, and we want to make sure that while they're there, they have complete access and complete access to all of their work that would be in Google Docs or whatnot. So we're working collaboratively as a superintendent group to make that more smooth for kids.
And one last question: the robotics and automated technology. Have we determined yet what level that class would be at? Are we thinking, still discussing that?
That's still in discussion with the superintendent group. There are a number of different ways that we can go. My assumption is that we will allow kids to choose what level they want that, if they want honors credit or not, and there will be some differentiated assignments if kids want to have the honors credit. One of the things that we hear for kids that go or that want to go to Eastern, when they go to Eastern, they miss out on having some honors courses here. And so if we can provide the opportunity for that to happen at Eastern, we can open the door to Eastern for some more students. But there is some disagreement among the superintendent group at this point about how to do that. But I think we can solve that by, there's two pathways. There's maybe some extra things or different things you have to do for honors credit. But we didn't want to put a harsh prerequisite on that course because we want that to be accessible to kids.
Ms. Iannetti?
I just wanted to ask about the March 13th deadline for the override. It does seem a little early for a student who might be teetering.
We put that date in place so that we can actually make the course change in Infinite Campus, and I'm saying that this trying to have a heart. When we get the paperwork back, we then make the change, and we start running tallies. We're looking at staffing. We're looking at seats in a classroom, and really this information drives the matrix of the master schedule and what we can do before June 1st. After June 1st, we're talking about balancing classes, making sure we have 25 or less kids in all of our classrooms. So while I appreciate the question, and I recognize it is early, it's only a week after counselors have wrapped up our meetings with students, so it gives only 5 school days for students to turn in that paper copy. It's really crucial that we get that information sooner than later so that we can plan for the district.
And if some exception, some wiggle room there if a student, like they're really struggling in the math class that they're taking.
The form actually says it's based on seat availability. So if there is not space in that content area, then we can't push anyone else out of it, and we're not creating new sections at that point.
But I think to the best of our abilities, we do make sure that kids are in the courses that they really need. So this deadline, when I look at this deadline isn't very much different from other districts that I've worked in because it really does start to drive the schedule. And I think the real power behind this is that we've had meetings with kids, but yes, there are always some, there's always some wiggle room.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I was just hoping we could touch on dual enrollment for a second. Looking at the course offerings, I know we've had discussions in the past about trying to expand that going forward. Most of these seem like they are offerings at those individual campuses. Are we looking at expanding opportunities for online coursework since so many programs offer that? Or, if a student came with an interest, I'm going to throw one out there, not to say this would be, but just one, like genetics, for example, for like junior or senior year. Could parents bring that to you? How, if it's not listed here, can we provide credit for it? How does that work?
So the first answer to your question, we do dual enrollment through the community college, Montgomery Community College. I've approached Villanova and Temple to see if we could engage with them to really expand and really blow the doors off dual enrollment. As you might suspect, they're not very eager to, they're not very amenable to doing that, right? One of the things that we have, to your genetics example, we do have an independent study if there's a student that has a GIEP or a student that has that extreme interest, but it's in addition to other coursework. Now, one of the things that I think we all around this table feel passionately about is making sure that our program of studies remains nimble and really offers things that kids want, right? So, you know, the genesis for some of the new English courses, the genesis of Python, you know, so as we're meeting with kids and we're talking with kids and we see some trends and interests, we may look at adding some courses. For example, last year we added survival science because there was this growing interest to have some cross-curricular things with the science department. So not ruling it out. What would really help if universities would really be amenable to engaging with us.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not only do we have dual enrollment agreements with Montgomery County Community College, but also Westchester University and Gwinnett Mercy.
Right, and I did see those expansions. I thought that was great. So I think that what you just talked about, Dr. Yanni, was an opportunity potentially to tap into that independent study program in a different way than what we've done in the past and making it a bit more accessible to kids maybe that had GIPs and have sort of waived those or what have you. So I think that would be a good ongoing discussion potentially.
And I would say as we review our courses in meaningful ways through the curriculum review cycle, that we would look to see, are there trends locally, nationally, globally that are changing course that we need to keep up with or that we need to look forward to. And if that means reaching outside of even local area for some of those courses or re-envisioning what our own courses look like. So I think that would be, you know, when we look at something like that topic, is that something that we could handle here? Is that something that Eastern could help us with? Or is that something that we need to look, you know, further out of our doors?
One of the anomalies, I think, here in the district, Mr. Hoffman and I have been talking, in both of our previous districts, forensics was the most highly sought after science elective. But yet, in our district right now, it's viewed as a lower level class. And so, actually just got an email from our science supervisor to meet with her and Dave to talk about how do we reinvigorate that course, because there's some great potential in that. And it's not a low level class. It's, you know, we have to bring back the excitement and sort of the, you know, the joy of learning science. The only science that right now that we require is biology. So kids are required to take 3 years of science, so we want to make sure that we have good offerings for them.
Mr. Sirota?
I have two questions. One is on the new parent approval process through Infinite Campus. So I gather that's intended to be identical to the process that we have done on paper. It's a one-time thing. So or does that come around again after the schedule is actually built?
It's a one-time process. However, I haven't seen it yet or used it or utilized it yet to know exactly how to answer the question, but the idea in mind is to be as similar as it was last year. Instead of the paper, it's the preview, the link, and the approval.
And regarding the programming of Python class, I'm interested to know, reading through the descriptions and things, I mean, it strikes me as somewhat different and yet somewhat the same as the old course, which is now called computer programming. And is there an expectation that students would do both, or do we think that one of these will sort of win out over time, or what's the expected interest in this class?
I believe the thought is that this provides more opportunity for students interested in computer programming. And if you're on the link, I think some of you are in the actual math department section, you'll see that students can take all 4 classes, the Python programming, AP principles, and AP computer science. If the math department were here, I would say that they would love it for students to take 1 each year to follow along with that pathway. But students may choose to take 1 or 2 and try something different. I think it depends on the student.
Okay. I'm hoping, to me, I think it's a great start. I'm glad we have a programming with Python class. I think Python is an excellent language to choose. I'm somewhat nervous reading the description that it appears to be a Python class and not a programming class. That is, it's not sort of in the abstract, algorithmic way of thinking that a programmer thinks. It's specifically about the language of Python, which seems to me to be a bit narrow. But it is an excellent start. I do think that the existing class is dated, and so I would not be surprised if this is much more popular than that going forward. But there is a difference in terms of the dual enrollment capability and things like that, so that may drive people. But I'm curious to see where it goes in the future.
And we talked through that as a team. The Python course is really for students who have no previous coding experience, and it's a language that is much more accessible to students than some of the other Java and others. What they're hoping then, that this would allow students to learn Python in an academic setting, which would then allow them to continue on with the other courses with deeper knowledge so that they can use both as they go into the advanced courses. One of the questions that we asked was then, if it is more accessible, does the target audience need to be earlier than high school? And we would like to see that at some point. This is just kind of getting us into that level to provide some access enthusiasm surrounding it so that we can provide access, opportunity, and choice to students with programming.
Sure, we'll find out more as we see when students want to take it. Python, just for everyone's knowledge, is a much more accessible language, but it's also a very successful real-life programming language. It's not an introductory programming language. It is a fully functional, real-world sort of thing. And right now, I do think that whatever exposure we're giving them are in languages like Scratch and I'm not sure what else, but yeah, right. I mean, it's much more introductory than Python.
And middle school will be very introductory, like Scratch and Java, right? And so and very, very basic Java, and you're almost skipping this much more natural language that's very powerful, which is Python.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it's time to move away from Java. Yeah, I'll put a bet out there that a lot of students are going to want to take computer programming and then one of the AP computer sciences, and that's it. I'd be very surprised to see students take these particular classes for 4 years. If we want a 4-year computer science course offering, I think we need to design it more fully. But this is a great start.
Mr. Wallach?
My questions are easy. The March 13th deadline for override, okay, how many weeks, you said 5 days, do parents have to review and then propose to make a change?
So the course selection process will begin in January. Teachers will start meeting with students, and I don't have the actual time frame up, but I believe it's on the earlier portion of the program of studies. Teachers will have recommendations in Infinite Campus by I believe, February 7th. Students will then they'll see it, they'll see the core recommendations. They will then upload elective choices. Counselors will then meet with students February 18th through March 6th. So from January 30th, recommendations are in, up until March 13th. The the course recommendations have been uploaded, so it's not just a 5-day window of time that parents and students have to make a change or a course override. They have from the beginning, or from the day that the teacher made the recommendation and the program of studies is out, to make that change.
Okay, and the parents can review all this information online on Infinite Campus, is that correct?
They can review course requests in Infinite Campus, yes.
And the form, can they fill out that form online?
They fill the format? No, they can't we're not there yet, but they can download the form from the program of studies, which will be online. And we have paper copies available in the guidance office
Yeah, I was
as
going
well.
to say, so the homeowner or the parent could print it out at home,
Sure.
fill it out.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Students come and pick them up in the office as soon as they know the forms are available.
But the parent has to sign off on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Wallach?
Question. The courses with the NCAA logo, what does that mean, and or how does a course qualify for that?
Excellent question. NCAA has a clearinghouse process where they review our curriculum, the syllabus, the curriculum, the scope and sequence of the course in that content area, to then determine on their own end if the course qualifies as a college-approved course. So if a student athlete is interested in applying to a Division I or II school, they'll need to take NCAA-approved courses. The NCAA will then look at a student's transcript, they'll compare it to courses that have been approved of on their end from us to determine GPA that they then recalculate, and eligibility for then the student athlete to then be an athlete on their campus. The clip is just, you can look in NCAA right now, and you can search Upper Dublin High School or any high school in the country to get a list of what classes have been approved of. Adding the symbol on the course name was just a way to help students and parents understand what classes have been approved of by NCAA.
All right, thank you. A couple of questions are still left on my list, so I'll try and get to them. First of all, the teacher recommendations. Definitely, individual teachers will look at a student's performance in their current class, but they don't necessarily have the full view of the student's overall load. To what extent are students, parents, and perhaps teachers discussing this whole business of the overall load? Because I think that's a big issue that parents and kids on paper, things look really like, well, I've got to do this, but the reality is that there's only 24 hours in a day. We want kids to sleep, do some other things as well. So how do you address that in this course selection?
When teachers are meeting with students to make recommendations, they're just talking simply about their own content class. They're not looking holistically at the student. I mean, they may be if they are aware of something, or they may be, if the student is struggling in the class, learn some more information about them. One of the primary goals of the school counselor meeting with a student is to take that big picture, holistic look at what's going on. Here are the courses listed. I know all of the things that you do after school, or if there are other factors involved in the student's life that maybe they can't take all, or they need to reconsider taking all of the classes that they have currently signed up for. So we take a lot of pride in the guidance office during that 3-week period of time where we pull students out one at a time to look big picture, but I would say that responsibility is on our office. And if we feel strongly, we have that conversation with the student. probably some of the criticism I will say our department receives is that we aren't necessarily available right away for parent phone calls or communication or conversations during that period of time. That's because counselors are meeting with students. If we have a concern, if a counselor has a concern, they will communicate that with a parent. It might not be that day that they met with a student, but it will be had.
Is there an opportunity in Infinite Campus to make a note on that by a teacher or somebody else so that that is identified or indicated as part of a conversation?
So on this same slide, I have, this is our new system this year. I'm not fully, this is the first time we'll be going through this. I'm not fully aware of all of the functions that Infinite Campus offers with course selection. Something tells me probably not. That it probably can't be noted in Infinite Campus, but I certainly can look into that as we go through it. But I think that those are good human conversations to have, teacher to student, student to counselor, counselor to parent.
Sort of on the same, in the same sort of train of thought, I think especially for families whose first child is going through this process, or people who are not necessarily familiar with the process in terms of coming from different countries, different cultures, different systems, is there a way for the guidance counselors to identify those particular families or those particular students to maybe give them a little bit extra help, because it can be pretty overwhelming.
I agree and understand what you're saying. I would say the process can be overwhelming for a 9th grade student or for 11th grade student who may be stressed or you know, making difficult decisions because of potential college planning. I think we try to handle each student as with kid gloves, as carefully as we can, with all good intentions, so that students make the right decisions and in the decisions that are in their best interest.
All right, and then a little bit more of a sort of bigger picture question. How do you go about deciding what new courses to include? And part of that is is a planning, much more district planning thing. But is there a process to look at what new courses and to include, or is there some way that you're polling recent graduates to see on how well they feel they were prepared going into college, in terms of, or saying, hey, these skills we didn't really have coming in, that would be helpful to have. So what do you do to keep improving the offerings?
Okay. I can't speak necessarily to where we've been in that process. This year we did have this course, the Python course, brought to us, and that was based on trends that computer science teacher at the high school was seeing, and through his work with K-12 parent outreach. That topic that you're bringing up, how do we make sure, how are those courses brought through, will be part of the curriculum review cycle moving forward, that we do look at tallies of course requests each year. We look at enrollment of those courses. We look at sections that run. We'll look at the data that we have, both in terms of assessment and standard data, down to retention, national trends, and as I mentioned with Ms. Francis' question earlier, that we would look at trends that our students are coming out through. I know that our guidance department does some work with reaching out to alumni and has brought alumni back for conversations with students, and I think all of that can be a valuable part of that process for us. So just want to make it more systematic so that we're really investing time and resources appropriately.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. And also, I think looking at maybe what peer districts are doing and to see how things are going. One final question for kids who are currently in the middle school: is there how does the guidance department in the middle and high school work together to make that transition, which is always a challenging one from 8th to 9th grade? I mean, from a curriculum perspective, as smooth as possible.
I'll begin with eighth grade parents are invited to attend our Program of Studies night on January 30th, where we do a review of some similar information that we're talking about this evening, policies, practice, and they also have an opportunity to then speak with content area supervisors and some elective teachers to gather and collect some information about courses. Early February, I travel down to the middle school and I bring about 3 or 4 seniors with me. I've done this for about 3 or 4 years now. Have great panel discussions about the process, how to make good choices, offerings at the high school. These are really enlightening conversations to have with kids, and they're with 8th graders and seniors, and they're really powerful. What I've learned in my experience doing this is kids listen mostly to other kids. And while I'm there to guide and add input when needed, this is a conversation had between high school seniors and current 8th graders about what the high school is like and how to make good curriculum decisions and teacher recommendations and choices. After that point, the 8th grade middle school counselor will go into, I believe, science courses this year in 8th grade, and will give classroom lessons about the program of studies and course selection and the process. Unfortunately, students don't meet individually with their 8th grade counselor as we do here in the high school. There are 340 8th graders, if my number is accurate, plus or minus a few, and it takes counselors 3 weeks to meet with students individually, and trying to model that and do something similar would take an extremely long time. So we try to communicate and educate our parents as much. In a couple weeks, I'll be going down to Sandy Run, 2 weeks, and give a parent presentation to the PTO about the program of studies and have a little bit more of an intimate conversation about what happens and how to give them some guidance and help in making decisions. They follow a similar process that I have laid out here. In late January, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place with my dates. Late January, the elective teachers all go down to Sandy Run Middle School and run an electives fair where they bring and show various models of what actually happens in elective courses here at the high school, whether it's guitar or art or theater. It's a 2-day advisory event, so students can get a better idea as to what electives they really want to sign up for. Prior to this meeting starting, I had a conversation with Mr. Tranis where teachers are making videos about what classes look like and what happens inside the classroom. The goal is, I'll say, to have not only an electronic copy or a fabulous website that you can look through, but to also have links, video links with the courses. That's not this year. We have some videos, it sounds like, that are in the works, but long term, I would love to see, as you click on Python, you could hit the course and get a video clip of what's actually happening in the classroom and some examples of coursework and things like that. Also, along the lines of transition, in May, we bring all of the 8th graders up here to the high school, and we run a pretty great transition program for all of the 8th graders. We give all of the students tours in groups of 10, and we have panel discussions about, again, what happens here at the high school. And then I'm going to jump all the way to August, where we do new student and parent orientation, which I think is another amazing event and incredibly popular, and a packed house, where administration, students, teachers, school counselors are all here. Not all, but many are here, and we work through transition then.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ward. Yeah. No.
Can I
That's all
just
good.
mention one
Yeah.
more thing? So the course selection guide is over 100 pages. There's lots of courses listed in there. Just because it's in the course selection book doesn't mean it necessarily runs if there's not enough student interest to run a course. As we have in the past, after we do the first run of the schedule, probably in May, we'll be bringing to this committee, either in May or June, courses that we're not going to run because of enrollment. The other thing, as we look to make sure that all of our groups of students are represented equitably in courses, we'll also be bringing some data about the subgroup makeups in our courses, particularly our honors and our advanced placement courses.
In terms of the courses that won't run, is there a way this year, I think you did it a little bit last year and it was really helpful, to identify courses that haven't run for a couple of years?
Yeah, last year, yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ward, and to all involved in putting this presentation together and the whole program together. I think we can now move on to Education Committee reports and recommendations, and there are two such reports. One is for student activities, and there are two activities, two field trips. Mr. Hoffman, do you want to comment on those? No? Actually, I had a question on one of them. It says the marching band has a service trip. What is the service component of that trip?
Their theme this year was Hurricane Katrina. I'm sorry. Yeah. Rebuild. I'm sorry. I know it. That's why I looked as I put the microphone to here. That's why I was looking like, what was the name of the show? They're actually traveling to New Orleans, and they'll be working, I believe, with Habitat for Humanity. Is that correct? Okay.
And they're also making some music when they're there, or is it just purely a service trip?
Right. Right.
They're going to listen to a performance of New Orleans Orchestra, interact with them. I think they're going to go to Preservation Hall. They're going to do the Steamboat Tour, the Jazz Tour. Plantation, I believe, is also on the agenda. So they have if you've never been to New Orleans, I think the goal is the service, but also to get a taste of what New Orleans has experienced, I think, since 2005 in Katrina.
Okay, that clarifies that. Are there any questions on this? No, then I think we can move that forward to the legislative meeting. And then we have the conferences, and there are two conferences listed. And with Mr. Vinogradov here, what are you excited about on this conference?
It'll be my first trip to Pittsburgh. So I attend, there are two conferences that really are valuable. The ISTE conference is a global look at trends, and then Beat&C is an opportunity to explore what's happening regionally and to network with peer districts and colleagues around similar initiatives and challenges. It usually happens in Hershey, and it was not my intent to go this year because it was in Pittsburgh. And then over the holiday, I was asked if I would present, and I said, sure, will you waive the conference fee? And they said yes, and then I said, okay, I'll make the journey. So I'll make the pilgrimage. But it really is about that network and tapping into peer-alike districts. By peer-alike, same size, same challenges, same place in our journey towards personalized learning and leveraging these tools to support teachers, students, and families in that journey. And so, those are really those conversations, and the shared solutions are what I'm looking forward to.
What are you presenting?
So I'll be presenting for Google, and right now it is taking a look at some of the mashup of Google tools and how we can, take the traditional tasks that we do now in education, which really are compliance-based tasks, right? So you think about the experience of kids with worksheets, et cetera, right? And so how do I start with my mastery goals in mind? How do I create differentiated pathways for these kids? And then really, how can I leverage these tools to do two things? One, provide feedback as the work unfolds, so that when a child has hit submit, we've already had a conversation about their ideas. It's not a set of completion tasks. And then also, how can I use these tools to for sharing my work with an authentic audience?
So we look forward to hearing back after your conference, right? Thank you. All right, so I think we can move that to the legislative agenda too. Then it's now time for community input. The microphone is that one over there. And as usual, please state your name and where you reside in the township.
Jenny Vitella, Ambler. I just want to say that this sounds so overwhelming, but having just gone through it last year, it is so easy and it's so great. And Donna and her staff and all the teachers do a great job. So no worries, all parents have to go through that. And I wanted to put a plug in that the PTO from Sandy Run will be having Donna, which speaks more specifically just from the 8th grade to 9th grade transition, which I found super helpful last year, and I'm sure the parents did as well. So that's all. Thanks.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I just had a question on something that was mentioned in passing. I think you said that most of the classes in the high school were 25 or less, or that was a goal, sort of. When the district started the detracking, I definitely remember parents complaining that they thought it could be hard to do with some of the high class sizes. I'm wondering if you have any numbers on a percentage maybe of how many of the high school classes would be above that 25 or less? Just, I know you maybe don't have it in front of you, but maybe a rough idea. Like, are 10% of our classes actually 30 or something, or whatever? And you can answer at the end. You don't have to answer. So I just had a question about that. And then I guess I do have one more question, which is regarding the course changes. It seems to me that would be really, really worthwhile compiling data on. I don't mean data with kids' names necessarily, nothing identifying. You probably wouldn't even want to identify the teacher's name either. But I'm just curious, is the district compiling data from last year, for example, on how many kids dropped a certain course, which course, what was the name of the course? I think that would be important. And if you're not doing it, is it something you might be interested in doing? I just think it would be worthwhile to try to figure out why were certain kids they were misplaced, obviously, because parents do have input, guidance has input, the current or past year's teacher has input, yet mistakes can happen. And it'd be interesting, I think, if you compiled that data. It maybe you only use it internally, but it might be useful for future placements of future kids. So I'd just like to know if you're doing it. If you're not doing it, you think maybe you should be doing it. Thanks.
Tanya Colon, Fort Washington. I just need a clarification about the, I guess it was the courses dealing with English. For example, if I'm looking at 11th grade and it says world literature novel versus or world literature short story, I wanted to make sure I get clarity on are the expectations the same for each course? So, for example, if you're in one, are you writing like, it used to be you're writing like maybe 2 papers versus the other one was 1 or something like that. So are the expectations and the requirements the same to build or continue with the skills that they should be using there? Thank you.
All right, is there any other community input? Then we'll close community input, and I'm going to ask
So in terms
Dr.
of
Ali to respond.
Yeah, so in terms of classes that are over 25. Looking at just a brief report I just ran in Infinite Campus, I would say around 6 or 7% of our courses are over. It's a very low percentage, and in fact, many of our courses don't reach the 25 student count. In terms of, are we looking at what courses kids are dropping, kids are changing? Yes, we're looking at that internally, and doing some analysis to see why we're seeing that. And then the answer to your question, yes. So the English requirements, I'm mandating that next year that the rigor is the same in both of those courses. So whether you're taking world literature and the novel or world literature and short story, the prerequisites are the same and the level of rigor would be the same.
And Dr. Yanni, that is on the agenda for the English department next Friday at the professional learning, to look at it from a standards perspective for English 11 and ensuring that their courses are meeting that expectation.
All right. I think we are getting to the end of this meeting. Is there anybody who wants to comment on anything? All right. Then I'd like to announce or thank people for coming in the audience and also here at the table. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, February 5th in this same location, the Cardinal Room at 6 p.m. And then I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.